That's so funny you say that.
C'era una lettera accanto ai cadaveri. Ha firmato con una parola.
Hi, nice to see you, first of all.
Hi.
And I love that this movie speaks about repressed trauma. I think that Longlegs is that tiny voice in our head that says to us that our home could not be safe and family is a lie. So I want to talk a little bit about this. Did you think about repressed trauma for this movie?
I think, I guess I think the word trauma or the idea of trauma gets used a lot, maybe a little bit too much. I think what I mean in this movie is more closer to what you said about, when we're children in our houses, and obviously it's varying degrees for people. Like some people live in households that are very open, some people live in households that are very cloaked in secrecy, and most of us live sort of somewhere in between. But the idea that a kid kind of knows everything, right? A kid is sort of capable of picking up everything, and that fact can be managed by the parents in a good way or in a hurtful way. And that in the case of the Longlegs story, it really is a mother's effort to do right by her child, by doing extreme wrong, right? And so it's a little bit about the balance of that. I think it's more, rather than being about trauma, I think it's more just sort of asking the question of how much is too much when it comes to protecting our kids.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how only a person like Lee could understand Longlegs, because she refused to be in society like a normal being. She doesn't have a boyfriend, a love interest, sons. She doesn't have family, and it is the same. So, do you believe that being outside society can help us to understand it better?
I think what's going on with her is that because her childhood in essence was ended when she was 9, and in a way was made to sort of see only the world partially after that. She never really fully learned in her adolescent years, in the sort of the years when you learn how to be social. She didn't have the ability to connect in that way, because an aspect of her mind or her spirit or her karma or her soul, whatever you want to call it, was sort of twisted off when she was 9. And so she doesn't have channels for human contact. She doesn't know how to be social. She doesn't know how to interact. She's very internal, because her connection to the world was sort of clamped by Longlegs and her mom and the devil's desire to kind of make her see only what they wanted her to see. So she has a very narrow opening through which she lets the world in.
I love the work you did on space. Lee's house made me think about a coffin, and all movie is really, the geometry is amazing. So I want to know a little bit, how did you work on the space of the movie?
When you're making a movie, I mean, the way I do it is I really just try to do what I love, and I really just try to see what I want to see. And you see 50 houses and only one of them feels like the one that makes sense to you. There's no big design in me, other than I'm deploying my taste and my preference, and I'm applying that to everything the best that I can. That's the filmmaker's job, right? Is to choose between A or B or C sometimes. And so it really just becomes a matter of taste. And if you're confident in your taste, then everything starts to feel like it's cohesive, and it starts to have a truth to it, and it starts to sort of live in its own way. Like, I never thought of it as a coffin, but you thought of it as a coffin, which really works. So that works for me. That works for me. Great. It really just becomes about putting forward what you want to see. And sometimes you see things, and it's confusing to me when I see movies that are sort of don't have that don't have a taste, or don't have a preference, or actually deal with things that are quite uninteresting. To me, it's a very strange thing that when that happens, we have an opportunity as filmmakers to express the world as we love it. And sometimes movies just don't do that.
You really did a magic trick, because in many scenes there's a black goat, but I couldn't really catch up all the black goats that are in there. But so I want to ask you, how did you work on that? Because you really are like a magician. We know that they are there, but we didn't see them.
Yeah, I mean, it was written into the script that the sort of horned devil goat figure would be present at certain turning points in Lee's discovery. And that was just the very literal expression of the devil being a part of her life, or something, a force that watches over her, guides her, is sort of a parental figure almost. And so the predominant one is the one where she's little and she's sitting on her bed, and you see the goat devil behind her. But then as we were cutting the movie, and as we were, in the editing process, everything gets much deeper, and everything gets much more interesting than the script was. And in the editing process, we found opportunities to sort of hide him throughout her life, as it were, to put him in all of her spaces, as it were. And it became just, it works the way it worked for you, which is you feel it. Sometimes you glimpse it. But I think that was also part of the bigger design of the movies. There's a lot of detail. And I think part of what we were trying to do was encourage the audience to really look, and to dig the fact that the world that we made was very rich and detailed and textured, which, again, like I say, a lot of movies just aren't, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. In the movie, the mothers are maybe too present, and they can lie, and the father figures really are just violent. So, what does he say in this movie about family?
I think it maybe maybe because all the movies I make are reflections of my own experience and kind of what I know to be true. I would say that my father certainly wasn't violent, but was absent. And so I think the quality of the absent father is something that's real in this movie. And then the mother is not necessarily overprotective, but she takes it upon herself to be the protector. And that's obviously a sort of an elemental quality of the maternal, right, is the protection quality. And so it just felt like a movie in which the mother is almost forced to overcompensate to protect their children from the dangerous world.
Have you ever played with the Alan Wake 2 game? Because watching your movie, I thought about that game, and I'm wondering if you ever play with it.
It's funny, you're the second person to say that to me in 2 days. I don't even know what it is. I never even heard of it. I don't even know what it is. So the answer to your question is no. But I guess the other thing you can say about it is that in the big stream of everything that's available, whoever was doing the Alan Wake game is connected to something that's the same as me. But the true answer is I don't even know what you're talking about. Isn't that funny?
Okay. And I think that Longlegs is a new icon of not only horror cinema, because I don't think this is only an horror movie, but it's a new movie icon. So are you thinking about maybe doing a prequel, a sequel, or it's just one shot?
I think that's always going to be the question. When something is successful and indelible and gets into the bloodstream of the culture, people usually want more of it. And then it just becomes the question of do you give more, or do you withhold? Do you try to focus the energy into the thing that exists, or do you try to sort of expand and let it be more than that? And the answer to that question today is I really don't know. I got a lot of stuff I want to do, but I think that the idea of a sequel or a prequel is also cool because it can really be anything. Like M. Night Shyamalan's version of that with Split being the sequel to Unbreakable, and they were whatever 20 years apart and seemingly unrelated until the very last scene. That kind of thing is really exciting and cool. So I'd say it's strong, maybe.
You've said that Longlegs was a character that come to your mind many times. So maybe there's a Longlegs universe. We don't know.
There's definitely that. There's definitely that. And I think no matter what I do, it's probably gonna end up feeling like it sort of belongs to the same universe. So I might just do it on purpose.
And I love the fact that Longlegs is so iconic also because you all did magnificent marketing campaign. You never show his face to us before, and Nosferatu is doing the same thing. We haven't seen Bill Skarsgård Nosferatu yet. So do you believe that today we are spoiling too much movies with trailers, with preview look? We should keep it more secret.
I think that what Neon did with the release of the movie and the ad campaign sort of addressed what you're saying for audiences, where it's been a complaint of audiences for a long time. Don't show me the whole movie. I don't want to see you. Show me all the best parts. And it seemed very obvious to us that we wouldn't show Nick early, that we would leave that. That's our big thing. That's the thing you're holding. That's the ace in your sleeve. And so I think the way that it worked so well with what Neon did, it's not surprising to me that other people are going to do more of the same. I think it's exciting. That's also in a world where everybody, especially young audiences, are connected to image constantly all day and disposable image on social media, just image that has no value. To hold image back and to give it out when you want to seems like a powerful move.
It was this movie was almost like cathartic for me because I really it made me think about what we experienced with the pandemic, with the lockdown. So I don't know, maybe it's a coincidence, but it was also your thought. Maybe with this movie you process that period of time.
Yeah, I mean, it was written during the pandemic, not necessarily during the lockdown, but it had everything that I don't think anybody's really fully processed or recovered from what the pandemic meant to us, and what a profound shift in our psyches that was, when all of a sudden we were told that we couldn't connect with people. And for the longest time, faces went away. Remember that? Like, for the longest time, there were no fucking faces in the world, and you lose so much. We're so trained to know what we feel by other people's faces, and when we lost all that, this deep, weird alienation happened. So, yeah, it makes sense that Longlegs would feel like that kind of a movie where disconnect and sort of the connective aspect of living is hampered or scary or kind of threatening in a way. And I never thought about Longlegs' face being kept out of the frame as having anything to do with sort of COVID masks and stuff. But now that you mention it, it's probably in our psyche somewhere, the loss of the face,
Mm-hmm. And final question, why are you so interested in puppets, in toys? Because here we have a doll, very creepy doll. Now you're making a movie about the monkey, so where they are beautiful props, but why do you love them so much?
They're very these two things are very unrelated. Yes, they're both sort of dolls, but the dolls in Longlegs came from sort of ancient ancient, sort of old tribal beliefs around things like voodoo dolls or effigies. Like you break the arm of this doll, it's going to break the arm of your enemy, or this like sympathetic idea of sympathetic magic was where the puppets came from. So that the dolls came from. So that was that. And then I was just lucky to be given the opportunity to do a Stephen King movie, and whatever it was going to be, I was going to say yes. And it just so happened to be a toy. So I guess I'm stuck with it, but I'm pretty happy.
Okay. Will you prefer that he says that your movie is good or not? Because every time he says that a movie adapted from his work is good, it's so bad. And when he says bad, it's a masterpiece like Shining. So what would you prefer?
That's so funny you say that. He's a lovely man, and he's been very quiet about my movies in general, which is fine with me. I would just assume that he and I have a sort of a mutual quiet respect for each other, and we don't necessarily need to talk about it. It's very funny what you say, though. Yeah, I hadn't thought about it.
Okay, thank you so much. This movie is amazing. So let's stick with that one for now.
Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.